good day everyone, you're welcome to the channel. This is Yuglo Fashion and thank you so much for stopping by. In today's tutorial, I'll be sharing the making of this rich auntie style with belt sleeve, and also I decided to add inbuilt belt to it. So please stay tuned and enjoy the tutorial. This is the silk fabric I used for the tutorial. It has two patterns. There's plain side and the other side has pattern. First of all, I measured the length of my client, which is 57 inches, and I added 1 inch to the 57 for M to make 58 inches. That's 57 inches. I added 1 inch for M to make 58 inches. And I folded it into two because I want to cut both the front and the back bodies together. So I folded into two, and please, I followed the pattern because I want the plain side to be on one side and the pattern to be on the other side. After folding into two, I later fold into four again. So I have two joint parts at the starting point, and also at the edge here I have four opened parts. It's opened at the edge and folded at the starting point. Next is to measure the circumference of our shoulder to sleeve. So to get this, you measure from the midpoint of your neckline at the back to to your desired sleeve length, where you want the sleeve to be. And for my client, I used 21 inches for her. I'll still be adding band to this, or let me say belt to this. So I first of all used 21 inches and I marked that out. After the 21 inches, and I also took the tape back to the middle here, to the middle of the dress, and I measured the neckline, though I used pin to secure down this silk fabric so as for it not to fall off from the table. So I measured 3.5 inches for the neckline width, and for the length, because I still have both my front and back bodies on the table, I used 1.5. So this 1.5 is for the neckline of the back, and also I proceed to mark 2.5 inch at the edge here and connected it to the neckline. And proceed to cut it out. Now this is our back bodies and the front bodies. Next is to measure the sleeve length where the belt will be stitched. So for this, it depends on how wide or how gathered, let me say how gathered you want the sleeve to be. So I used 9 inches. And I notched where the 9 inches is. Next, from that 9 inches, I measured 1 inch just to differentiate it from the main bodies where the 9 inches ended, and I cut that to the M. I marked the 1 inch right from the 9 inches down to the M, and I cut it out. So I later separated the front from the back bodies. This is the front bodies on the table, and first of all I want to reshape the neckline of the front. I marked 5 inches, then I curved it this way because the neckline is round. After that, I measured from the shoulder to our underbust. Our underbust is 13 inches, and I marked the 13 inches because the inbuilt belt will start there, and at the middle here I measured a nipple to nipple span, which is 7 inches divided by 2. You know the fabric is on fold, so that's 3.5 inches, and from that point I came down with 3 inches. And it depends on how big you want the belt to be, because the bigger the belt, the more snatching the waist will be. Next, I measured the belt, and I used 9 inches for the width, and for the length I used 23.5 inches, and I folded it into two. You know it's a belt, so I folded it into two to the wrong side, then stitch the edges, but I will leave one of the edges opened. That's because I'll be stitching that to the bodies of the dress. And at the edge here, I just gave it this belt shape, just slant it. Just do it the way I did mine. There's no special treat to this. And I proceed to iron it after stitching. To stitch to the dress, you stitch from this side. You stitch it like this, turn it to this side and stitch on the chalked part. First of all, I pinned and I proceed to stitch. So this is what it looks like after stitching the two. Next is our facing to turn the neckline of the dress. So please, the fabric left is not really much, so I just have to cut small facing for this. And for the facing, I used 6 inches for the length, and I placed the neckline. I folded it into two and I placed the neckline this way, and I proceed to cut it out. So after cutting the facing, I ironed my paper stay. The interface that I used is paper stay, and I folded 1/4 inch. If you have your weaving machine, you can actually weave the hem instead of folding it this way. Then I've done that for the two. I've stitched the facing to both the back bodies and the front bodies of the dress, and I proceed to stitch the shoulders together, that is the front shoulder and the back shoulder. So I first of all pin the two together, then stitch on it. So this is what it looks like after stitching. And I used hemming gum. This is hemming gum. I used hemming gum to gum it down. I used iron and melt the hemming gum after placing it under the facing. Next is to stitch the bodies together. So I pinned it round and proceed to stitch on the machine. After stitching, this is what it looks like. I left the sleeve side, which is 9 inches, opened, and you know it's on fold, so definitely it will be 18 inches altogether. And this is the part where we fixed the belt. For the belt, I used 25.5 inches, and for the width of the belt, I used 7.5 inches, and I folded it to the wrong side. I measured the circumference of the wrist of my client, which is 10 inches, and I measured 10 inches. I folded it into two. First measure 10 inches and notched where the 10 inches ended, and then proceed to the machine to stitch the remaining. So I left the 10 inches opened, and after stitching, I turn it to the right side and stop stitch on the 10 inches I left opened. So this is the 10 inches, and this is the remaining part that I stitch. So this is the top stitch part that I'm trying to open up for you to see. Next is to fix it to the sleeve, and before I do that, I have to open up this shoulder side a bit. So I opened it with like 2 inches. I opened it up. I don't supposed to stitch it to the edge before, so I opened like 2 inches because the belt is facing that direction. And after opening it up, I proceed to fold this way and stitch on it. I folded it once, then twice, and stitch on it. So after stitching, this is what it looks like. Next, I ran a stitch also on the sleeve side and pull the thread to make my gathered. So after pulling the threads, I ensured that it is exactly the 10 inches I needed for the wrist circumference, and I notched the middle of the belt, and also ensure I placed it directly at the armhole of the dress and stitch the two together all around. You can pin it round before you stitch. So our dress is ready. Thank you very much for watching this video to the end. please ensure you like, share and subscribe as well. Bye.